want to get to the top of Google? Do you want to get more traffic, inquiries and sales for your website? Everyone we speak to, that's the same objective. Well, stick around because in this video, I'm going to share with you my top 3 tips for doing exactly that. Hi guys, my name is Chris Bindley and I'm the founder of Traffic Boost Academy, and the purpose of this entire channel is going to be that I'm going to share with you my top hints and tips for getting to the top of Google, getting more traffic, inquiries and sales through your website. And just a little bit of background for me, I've been around in the SEO industry for quite a long time, back since 2008. And I think it's fair to say I know a thing or two, and I've watched the algorithms change over that period of time. But these 3 things really have not really changed. Also, they've never been more important than they are today. So those top 3 things, I'm going to share with them for you right now, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail. So the number 1 tip that I find is a common mistake people make is the right content. Now, I've been saying this since 2008. I know heaps of people say this, but it just doesn't seem to translate to reality when we check people's websites. You've got to have enough quality content. If your website is not seen as the subject matter expert, then Google and the search engines, they're just not going to rank it. I mean, if people go to your website, read it, look at that content and think, that's not really for them, then they'll exit and you'll have very low time on site measurements, and you'll also have quite a high bounce rate, and that's a bad thing for the search engine. So what do I mean by quality content? Well, for me, there's kind of 3 areas that I focus in on, and we will talk about keyword phrases in another episode, but suffice it to say that the topic that you're talking about, the content needs to be relevant to that. So very frequently we see websites where the specific keyword search phrase that people are looking for is not actually even mentioned at all in the content. So I would say relevant content. That would be very, very important. I'd also say from a relevant content perspective that you want to make sure that you're writing about that content and that content specifically. So if you think about it, I mean, Wikipedia is valuable because it's got a whole bunch of content, but it also has millions and millions and millions of pages of that content. So unless you're going to write a 50 to 80 page website, you really want to think about the relevancy of your content to the search engine result that a person's taken. So if they're searching, they find you, that's a good thing. The second thing is quality. So when I talk about quality, I simply mean writing for the user. You don't need to spam the search engine. You don't need to pepper that keyword phrase all throughout your content. Mention it in the title, mention it in the description if you can, mention it in your first paragraph. That's it. Nothing more complex than that. And just write for the user. So if the user keeps reading your content, and the user finds it's valuable and they keep looking around, that's a good thing. And then I guess the third thing is quantity. If you write 50 words of content, it's not really going to be as valuable as 500 words of high quality, highly relevant content. So top tip number 1 is content broken down to relevancy, quality, and quantity. So we move on to the next key area for me, and that is metadata. Now, what I mean by that is simply this. If I show you the difference between what Google sees, what search engines see, and what you see, it kind of makes it more sense. So a user will come to a website like ours here, my main branded site, and they see the logo top left, they see the main image here, the content that's written on that, and then so on and so forth. That's not what the search engines do, and it's not because they can't, it's just simply a matter of timings. It would take so much longer for them to index all of these extra things. They look at the content alone, so they can see where an item is placed and how it's relevant, but it's much easier to use a main heading tag or the particular page is about something in particular, so they look for the title tag, and then the description of that to see what it's about is the description tag. Now, why they're relevant, those two things, title and description, is because when you do a Google search like the average person does, this main area here, that's the title tag, and this is the description. Now, I could go on about a whole bunch of things here, but those two metrics there are measured very heavily by the search engines. They look at the click-through from those things. So if you have a better description tag, if you have a more relevant title tag, therefore leading for your click-through rate to be higher, and again, we'll dive right into those into other episodes, then it's going to be a good signal for the search engines, and so therefore it will assist with your rankings. So remember that the first tip I said was content. The second tip really is kind of the same. It's metadata, which is effectively content for the search engines, and structuring it in such a way that it's easy for them to read. So they come to the page, they say, hey, what's this about? You've told them in that title tag, and you're able to mention the keyword search phrase which you're wanting to target. The second thing which they look for is a little bit more of a breakdown, and that's the description tag. Now, make no mistake, the search engines read everything, but this just makes things a lot easier for them, and especially if you've done a search, you've found the search results, you've clicked through on that particular search result, and then you stayed around on this page, or should I say this page, for a while, you've even clicked through, that's going to aid massively in your ranking outcomes when you're running to rank in the search engines. So like I said, top tip number one is content. Top tip number two really is content for the search engines, or what they call metadata. Now there's a heap more alt tags. We won't go into those. Just look at those top three things, and I would say a really good guide would be your keyword search phrase. If you can mention it in the title tag, if you can mention it in the description tag, and if you can mention it in the first sentence of your content, that's a win. And if you have any challenges with that, there's plenty of tools like ChatGPT to be able to help you reorganize that content so that it is actually useful for you. So then for me, probably the final core tip, there'll be plenty of others that will follow, would be website speed. Now, the worst thing I suppose is that a website is slow. If you think about it from user experience, slow websites mean a negative user experience. And I remember reading a report once that Amazon measured, should I say, the direct e-commerce outcome based on the speed of their website, and they found that 0.1 of a second slower translated to a loss of 10% revenue. So 1 second extra is losing most of the revenue. So a slow website for Amazon is a massive thing. The good news is really that there's actually a very easy way to check, and I often check this by what you can do is you can actually Google the phrase Google page speed. There's some development things here, but we just want to demonstrate it. And you put in your domain name and you press analyze. Now this will take a little bit of time in the background, but what it does is it crunches the numbers and it looks for the things that it's looking for to score your website in order of importance, and realistically it's looking for speed. Now importantly here is that this needs to be checked frequently. I would say once a month, because when a plugin gets updated, and I'm happy to display that my website might be a little bit slower because I haven't addressed some of my plugins of late. There's two scores that you get. So the score you've got is the mobile score and then the desktop score. Now, we haven't put a lot of focus on our mobile experience of late. The desktop experience we've just changed, but the really important factors here to look for is the first contentful paint and the largest contentful paint. So the first contentful paint is how long does that website take to first load for a person? And then the largest contentful paint is how long does that take to load the entire page? And if you just think about that from the perspective of a person wanting to read your content, the longer that they wait, the worse it is. So we're aware of some of the mobile challenges we've got because I've got a particular plugin on the website that's having issues at the moment. So I'm just trying to be transparent to show you there's always work to be done. If you look at a website, another one of our websites, which is a little bit more static, that doesn't have a lot of detail on it, is straight up SEO. And this is information you could pass to your developer if you don't have any development skills. I'll also talk in another episode about how you can actually get a developer on board and use the resources that we have. So like I said to you before, the value of this, or the purpose of this channel, is to educate. I've no interest in trying to hook people into buying a course from me, or I mean, sure, down the track we'll definitely look at that, but I want to try to give you as much information as you can to make some really informed, quick decisions. So we'll talk in another episode about how you get a developer, but if you've already got a developer, you can simply give them this website and say, hey, look, the Google page speed says my score is 71 out of 100. Really, the higher the better. For me, I've known for both of these that I've got a specific plugin that I have had an issue with. So you can actually say to them, and the reason why this is really good, this website, is it actually shows them exactly what they need to do to minimize specific things, or cut down basically the content issues on the website. So just as a kind of taking 3 steps back, like I said at the start of this episode, the purpose of this channel is to educate. Now, there's more than one way to skin a cat, so there will be other people with opinions on how to do this stuff. This has just been my experience, and there's a whole lot more to it. But the number one thing for me from a rankings perspective that I see that improves a person's website pretty quickly is content. And you really need to start to think, I mean, if you don't rank for anything, you have no value or no disadvantage if you rewrite your content. If you do rank for some things, then you need to be a little bit more careful. But if you've got a website that ranks for nothing, it gets no traffic, it's a really good place to start to say, hey, what do we actually want to rank for? And I'll show you a tool in another episode called Uber Suggest. But do we actually write enough content for that? So there are tools, like I said, but ideally if your content from a human perspective is mentioned, or the content keyword phrase should I say, in the title, the description, and the first sentence, from a Google perspective, that's a tick. From a user perspective, is the content relevant? And there's a way that you can measure that, and I'll show you in another episode about the user signals like bounce rate and time on site. But effectively, if you measure those things, then keep an eye on them, you will have a far greater chance of ranking better in the search engines. Second thing is the search engine experience. So content number 1 for the user experience, content number 2 from a search engine perspective, and then website speed. Those 3 steps, you're already on your way for greater likelihood of ranking better in the search engines. So in our next episode, we're going to dive into picking keyword search phrases and looking at how we retrofit an existing content for a website to match those keyword phrases. And we'll also look at the reasons why we would pick particular keyword phrases. So if you haven't done so far, please like and subscribe. The purpose for this channel, as I said, is to educate, and the more people that subscribe to this channel, the better, because it gives me an opportunity to see, especially with the likes, which content I'm putting out there is actually relevant and valuable, and I'll continue to serve these while the continued need exists. So thanks again for your time, and we'll see you on the next episode.